The Spring Security JSP tag library provides us with the Authorize tag, which is one of the most simple forms of access control we can use in the Spring Security framework. The Authorize tag is used to conditionally display a section of the user interface, or our JSP. In this lesson, we're going to learn about the different configurations of the Authorize tag and their advantages and disadvantages. So within this lesson, we are going to work within the appointment.jsp page to require authorization in order to view certain buttons within the appointments page. In order to get started, the first thing we'll need to do is add a page directive, which will include the Spring Security JSP tag library. So to do that, we just add a tag lib declaration at the top of the page, and then we specify a URI. So once you have the double quotes, just hit Control Space, and then autocomplete is going to kick in, and we can simply select the springframework.org/security/tags URI, and that will include the Spring Security JSP tag library. And we just need to specify a prefix for the tag library, which we will use as SEC, so security. Now, with that tag library in place, we can now use the Authorize tag to control access to different components within the page. So I'm just going to modify our buttons here so we can see what's going on. We have 4 buttons at the bottom of the page. One is a back button that everyone will have access to. There's also a cancel button, which a user can use to cancel their appointment. So in order to view this button, we are going to authorize that the user has the role_user authority. And then we have the confirm and the mark complete buttons. So the confirm is used by an admin to say, yes, we accept this user's appointment. And mark complete is used by an admin to say that we have completed this work. So we're going to protect those and require authorization based upon the role_admin authority there. To do this, we can use the Authorize tag within our tag library. So we're going to start out by protecting the mark complete button, and we're going to use the Authorize tag. And the Authorize tag is almost like a sophisticated CIF tag if you're familiar with JSTL. It's basically going to conditionally display the body of the tag depending upon some attribute values that we specify. The first one that we're going to look at is the URL attribute. So what the URL attribute does, it allows us to specify a URL, and if a user has access to that URL, then the body of the tag will display. So we're actually going to copy some configuration from our securitycontext.xml file. Here we see that we are restricting anything requiring the schedule to the kBowersox user, and we're just going to specify that URL here. So now when Spring Security is determining whether or not to display this button, it's going to check whether or not our user has access to /schedule/star, so any URL that contains that. And it's going to basically refer to our configuration in the securitycontext.xml file, find this access attribute, and then execute or compare this expression language that we've provided to see if we return true or false, and that will determine how we conditionally render this button. It's a little bit odd. We normally wouldn't protect this with /schedule/star. It would probably be something closer to /appointments/complete, but we get the point across with that URL. Another way that we can use the Authorize tag is by specifying an access attribute. And this is very similar to what we see in the configuration file. It allows us to specify an expression, and that will determine whether or not the content is displayed. So we can use has role, and then here we're actually surrounding the back button. So let's surround our cancel button. And we're going to require the user role in order to display the cancel button. And we can use all sorts of the built-in expressions within that access attribute. So there we used has role, we can use has authority, basically anything that we can use in an expression, we can use within this access attribute on the Authorize tag. So there we see I'm using has authority, and now we're going to require that in order to display the confirm button, the user is actually an admin. So there we see all of our configurations in place. And now we'll just run through them in a demonstration. So I'm going to restart our server and then navigate to the browser, and we're going to log in with an administrative user to check that the authorized tag is appropriately rendering the buttons. So I'll log in with KBauerSox, who is an admin, and then I'll navigate to the appointments page, and there we see the confirm and the mark complete buttons displayed as we expected. We do not see the cancel button displayed, so we know that's functioning properly. Now let's talk a little bit about the URL attribute and the access attribute. When we are using the access attribute for the cancel and confirm buttons, we are using the expression language. Now, a problem with this is that if we repeat the same expression multiple times throughout the application, if we modify the expression, we need to modify it in multiple places, which exposes us to some errors. This limitation is overcome by the URL attribute, but you'll find that it's not applicable in every situation. So we're going to look at a new approach using controllers that will allow us to provide some more reusability. Within a controller, we are going to add the model attribute annotation, and we're going to create a model attribute named isUser. And then we're going to declare a public Boolean method named isUser, and we're going to pass in an authentication object to that method via dependency injection in Spring. Now, within the body of the method, we're going to perform some logic to make sure that the user has the role_user authority. And if they do, we're going to return true, and that's going to be passed into our model. So I'm just going to, on the authentication object, grab the authorities, and then check that it contains our role_user authority. And since that's going to create a list, I'll just get the first item in the list to pass into the contains method. So there we have performed our logic to determine if the user is authorized to access that resource. And now we just need to adjust our access attribute within our JSP file. So we'll go to the cancel button, and we're going to change the access attribute to use JSPEL and pull that Boolean isUser out of our model. Now we're going to restart our server and navigate back to the application, and we're going to test this out. So we need to log in with a user that does not have administrative privileges, so JADO password. Once the application restarts, it lets us in. We navigate to the appointments page, and there we see that the cancel button is displayed. And that's thanks to the controller logic we provided and the model attribute annotation. And this is a much more reusable approach than the other two methods that we looked at. So in this lesson, we learned to use the authorize attribute via a number of approaches, with the preferable one being configuring it within the appointment controller and passing a model attribute to our view.